met Butch in Neely last year. Neely is a small town of about 1,600 people in Nebraska. I asked him, what would you want in a community that you live in? Butch replied, well, I don't know. Get rid of the damn Mexicans for one thing. You can't have nothing. They steal everything you got. Butch, once upon a time, raced horses down Neely's Main Street. Now, though, he rides an electric wheelchair. It was mid-afternoon when he called me across to him. I sat on the sidewalk in the sun, and we talked for quite a while. Between smoking cigarettes, he chewed and spat tobacco. Born in '43, he said. He told me about his heart attack and his cancer. At his direction, I squeezed his leg and felt the hard swelling caused by his phlebitis. Then he told me about Maria, a Latina he invited to pick the peppers, the tomatoes, and the cucumbers from his overflowing garden. 3 days later, she came back with tacos and other homemade foods. She was loving, very sweet, Butch said. Very nice people. As a teenager growing up in suburban Canterbury in the southeast of England, I read Travels with Charlie, John Steinbeck's travelogue depicting his 1960 road trip around the United States with his dog, Charlie. It sparked my imagining of the archetypal American experience, adventuring west and the lure of the road. Some 30 years later, I developed a project, pithily titled, A Couple of 830-Mile-Long Conversations, funded in part by a significant grant from Humanities Nebraska. I spent 4 weeks in an RV, traveling the back roads of Nebraska, stopping in small towns and speaking with residents about their lives, their communities, and their stories. I traveled nearly 2,000 miles across 42 of Nebraska's 93 counties. Mile by mile by mile, I discovered humanity, including my own. To be human is to yearn for belonging, for a sense of meaning born in something beyond ourselves. And despite those initial stereotypes I heard from Butch, through conversation, we found our way to a genuine, deeper, more nuanced expression of the human experience. A couple of 830-mile-long conversations was less a project and more a quest or a pilgrimage. I wanted to know if we are to awaken our personal fulfillment through the conversational discovery of the humanity in others, what are the key principles and practices of conversation? During my month-long journey, and after more than 100 conversations, I discovered there are 4 essential ingredients. The first ingredient is openness, being curious, and offering a welcoming hand to serendipity. I met John in Alliance. During our 90-minute conversation, he told me about Robert Ball Anderson, a former slave from Kentucky who became Nebraska's first African-American homesteader and who, by 1910, the state's largest black landowner. That former slave and landowning pioneer was, John told me, his great-granduncle. If we are to grow, we must collaborate with chance. We must inquire at the edges of our experience. If we do, we might just happen upon and discover someone like John. The second ingredient is silence. I'm 83, Dee told me proudly. She asked if I wanted to see a photo of the barn her father had built near the town of Broken Bow. I agreed, so she popped home to retrieve it. She came back carrying a box. For 3 hours, I sat quietly as Dee told story after story, prompted by the photos and the papers in that box. At one point, Dee kept tapping an old black and white photo. "Oh, I remember." She then looked me in the eye and said, "Perhaps it is a good thing you are here." A conversation will tell us where it wishes to go if we allow it, which is hard to do in an era of information volume and velocity. Silence is a way we can examine our own thoughts, feelings, and memories. And by our silence, we give voice to others, like Dee. The third ingredient is empathy, walking in someone else's shoes. Edison Redness told me of a childhood of love and possibility that fell apart. Burglary and cocaine resulted in jail time. But it was in state prison where Edison met other inmates who were elders from his Native American background. His eyes were opened to a different legacy. Edison now sees the traumas of his people, of himself, from a different perspective. Having learned the greatness of his Oglala Sioux people, he is now building back and giving back. As French author Marcel Proust observed, with empathy, we get to see the world differently, one seen through the thousands of eyes of others. And we get to look back and see ourselves anew. And now the bad news. The final ingredient is the courage required to engage in authentic conversation. When Owen sat with me in St. Paul, he talked about astrology, his thoughts about being brain damaged, Elvis Presley, and Owen's long-lost love. Towards the end of our conversation, Owen said, "It might be stupid for me to share my thoughts with a stranger like you. But you know, at some point in your life, you have to try to figure out, is there somebody in the world you can trust?" Sociologist Sherry Turkle says, "We are lonely but afraid of intimacy. It takes genuine effort to engage in authentic conversation. However, the ongoing activity of conversation enables us to sidle up bit by bit to more challenging, difficult issues. Courageous conversation is the entry point, perhaps the entry price to a meaningful connection with another person. But like Owen, we have to choose to take the plunge. People deeply desire to be heard, and being fully present is a remarkable offering to bestow. In the entrance lobby to Alliance Public Library, I sat at a table with an empty chair across from me and a sign that read, "Hello, please sit and chat with me." And I waited. People smiled and nodded, but many skirted around me. One person, Elaine, hesitated, and so I invited her to join me. "Oh, I've got nothing to say. Everybody has something." She walked on a little more. "What will we talk about? Anything you like." She walked a little further, but turned and asked, "Do you want to hear my Charles Manson story?" In setting out to hear people's stories, I learned that my humanity is a gift given to me by others. In the months following my month-long journey, having met a diverse, intriguing miscellany of people, my wife, somewhat to her surprise, observed that I had more humility, a sense of wonder at the sheer richness of humanity. But we don't have to embark on this type of adventure to encounter the humanity in others or to reveal it in ourselves. We don't have to travel far at all. We merely need to turn towards others around us. I invite you all to talk with each other. If we are to awaken our sense of being, to affirm our shared humanity, to strengthen our human community, we have to converse. In a Chinese restaurant in Hastings, I sat across from Lisa, who explained this. Everybody has a voice. And if we just take the time to hear it, we can get underneath the things that keep us from deep learning, deep interaction, from deep humanness. We came here today together. Keep having conversations. Find each other. Discover yourself. Thank you.